What's up, guys, and welcome back to the Life's a Dance podcast. I am your gracious host, Trey Culata. Thank you, as always, for joining me because I am on a mission to help each and every one of us, myself included, figure out what the hell is going on that tangled mess that we call the human mind and all the crazy shit that happens in our lives and what it all means. What does it all mean? So that we can live more authentically with more joy and more purpose every single day. So again, thank you. By the end of today's episode, I am hoping that you are inspired to go out and make the change that you have been resistant to, which is what we discussed in our last episode. Because a lot of times, at least from what I've found, like 100% of the time in my life, when I'm feeling resistance to something, it's the one thing that I have to do that's going to make the most significant change or shift in my life. So in the last episode, like I mentioned, I mentioned that, if you're feeling this resistance, first of all, we have to obviously identify what's the resistance, where's it coming from, why am I feeling this resistance? And the second thing I mentioned is that you just have to go out once you've identified it and tackle it and make the change. But I realized after, re-listening to the episode myself, I was like, okay, we're telling somebody to just blindly go out and make the change isn't really arming you with the tools that you need in order to actually execute that in an efficient way that's going to set you up for success. So that's why today we are focusing on making change our bitch, okay? Because it's like, all right, where do we start? How does one go about making change their bitch? Well, I'm here to tell you that it is actually a lot easier than you might think. And step one is to just find the common denominator, the least common denominator. And what do I mean by that? I mean, you have to find the smallest possible thing you can do that will make you feel like you are making progress, but it's actually so doable that you'll stick with doing it every single day or whatever the frequency is that you choose. And I will give you some real life examples of this because I have done this several times in my life and it works like every single time. So one of the very first times that I implemented this strategy in creating, lasting change was around my exercise routine. And this was back in like the aughts of the 2000s. So, over 20 years ago, I decided that I wasn't, I had no workout routine. I wasn't exercising at all. I was in college and I had gained that freshman 15. So how does one go from zero to, an everyday formulating the habit of exercising regularly? So for me, I literally started out with, I said, okay, what's like the least thing I could do that is still going to make me feel like, okay, I'm making some progress. And for me, that was literally just running around my block one fucking time. That's it. I said, I'm going to run around the block one time, 3 times a week, because that seemed like a very doable thing that I could commit to. And it was giving me breaks in between where I didn't go full throttle, like, okay, I'm going to do this every day, because this is what happens, guys. You guys set a goal and the increment that you use is so large or it's not well defined enough that, and then you overcommit to doing it, every day or 5 times a week. So that and then the first 2 or 3 weeks, you're all gung ho, but then, you miss a day and then you're like, fuck it. And then I can't do this. And it's not for me. And you fall off the wagon. So let's break it down into the smallest possible effing increment, okay? One lap around my block 3 times a week. And after I did that for 3 weeks, because a long time ago, somebody told me that it takes 21 days to form a habit. After, there's been extensive studies done and a lot of science points to it actually takes 66 days. But I think the 3-week rule is a good one because you can start layering on a little bit more and a little bit more. And by little, I mean little, okay? Just a little tiny bit. So after 3 weeks, I said, okay, if I can stick with this for 3 weeks, then I'll try doing 3 laps around the block 3 times a week. See where I'm going with this? So I just slowly added another layer on. And then I started with my eating habits. So now that I'm regularly jogging around my block 3 times a week, 3 laps 3 times a week, which, I think it only took me maybe 5 to 10, literally probably 5 minutes right, to run around my block one time. So I was not exerting a crazy amount of effort, guys. All right. So that habit has been instilled. Let's fast forward a little further. Then I'm like, okay, let's talk about eating habits. How hard is it for us to implement long-lasting healthy eating habits? And again, the problem is too many people are like, okay, I'm going to just do a paleo diet or a keto diet or carnivore diet, and you last for 3 fucking weeks and then you fall off the wagon. Okay. These diets where it's like you're just eliminating an entire section of the food chain, or an entire food group, it's not sustainable. And that's why a lot of people cannot make change their bitch, because they are not implementing sustainable change. Okay. We are, and so let's back up. So from my perspective, because again, let's think college kid, eating ramen noodles, mac and cheese, drinking lots of beer in the middle of the night. I smoked at the time too. And I even used this strategy with smoking, which we'll get into in a second. But I said, okay, for 3 weeks, I am going to eliminate just mayonnaise. That's it. Instead of mayonnaise, I'm going to switch to mustard. I'm going to have some avocado. I'm going to do, olive oil, anything but mayo. And after you start implementing these small changes, and again, they're so tiny that it's like, A, it's easy. And B, by the time you get through that first 3-week period, you don't even miss it anymore. You actually, I would taste something with mayo and I would be like, ugh, that's kind of gross, or it was just like off-putting. Like it wasn't my preference anymore. And then I graduated to fried foods. I said, okay, I'm not going to have anything that is fried. So no more going through the drive-through for chicken nuggets and chicken strips and French fries. Like, let's pick a better option, like a baked potato or, grilled chicken. So, and then eventually it turned into my preference, and it was easy to just use that as a treat. I don't like the word cheat. I like treat. So, cause it's more just, positive. You don't beating yourself up about it like we tend to do. So that's another example, right? The eating habits. Pick one small change you can make, whether that's, okay, instead of creamy dressings, I'm going to do vinaigrettes for 3 weeks and see how I feel. And then add another small change and another small change. So like right now for me, I'm working on, cause this is, guys, I started this whole process back in the early aughts, 20 some odd years ago. So there's always going to be another evolution. So like right now I'm trying to, unwire my cravings for dessert after dinner, and at first I started with just replacing with tea with a little bit of honey, right? No like cookies, no ice cream, no whatever. Although I will treat myself like on a Friday night or a Saturday night, maybe bake some cookies or whatever. So it's just these small little things. And if you start out thinking, okay, if I can make it 21 days, then I can either layer on it, make it a little bit tougher, turn up the dial just a tiny bit, or we can, just keep going with where we're at. If we don't feel like we're quite ready to add something on, just keep going with that same thing. So again, just make it super, super tiny, super, super doable. Okay. Another example. Yes, this episode's probably going to run long, is with quitting smoking, because my husband right now, he in his vows and our wedding said that he was going to quit smoking. Has he done that? No, he has not. And it's because it's such a bear of an addiction to, especially when you've been doing it for, basically your entire life, 20 or 30 plus years. How do you even attack that bear? And I have a friend who likes to say, and this is a very famous quote, but I have a friend who likes to say it all the time. It's like, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Okay? We just have to break it down into one bite, into one little bite. And so for me, back when I was in my 20s and I was still smoking, I literally sat down and said, okay, I want to quit. So how do I do this? All right, let's reverse engineer it. I've got 5 main triggers that, the in the car cigarette, the after meal cigarette, the with coffee cigarette, etc. Oh, the drinking cigarette, that was a big one. So you can see where I'm going with this. I identified the triggers and I said, all right, I'm going to start off with my in the car cigarette, because every time I get in the car, I roll the window down, start it up, drive away, and light up. I'm going to go 3 weeks with, and this is going to sound so fucking counterintuitive, especially with smoking, but I'm telling you guys, it works. I stopped smoking cigarettes in the car. I said, okay, so, but I would still have my after meal cigarette, my coffee cigarette, my whatever other fucking cigarettes there were on the list. I still had those cigarettes. I just didn't have cigarettes in the car. So then after 3 weeks, I was like, okay, this next round, I'm not only going to not smoke in the car, I'm going to not smoke after meals. If I can wait 5 to 10 minutes after a meal to not, to get through that initial craving, I bet you I won't want it anymore. So sure enough, I went and I just kept layering it on. And eventually the big one is always the drinking one. But, that one was definitely tough, but I figured that one out too, but had I tried to do no smoking whatsoever, cold effing turkey, there's no way that would have been sustainable, because it's too much change. It's too abrupt. The brain can't process it. I mean, unless you've got nuts of steel, and I'm not even a dude. So, I'm already at a deficit in that department. But, if we can, again, just break it down. Making change your bitch does not have to be difficult. It can be a longer process than what we care for, which is another, step 2. We've got to be patient. We have to embrace the process. Okay. You just have to embrace the process and be patient. Understand that change is going to take a while, and that's okay, because I would rather you make small, lasting change than a big, humongous change that's only going to last for 3 weeks, and then you're back to square one again. And you got that, negative downward spiral of thinking, because you're reinforcing the fact that you can't commit. And I guess that brings us to step 3, is to just stay the course. Consistency, guys. But if you make it a small enough little dude, it's easy to be consistent. So it's like, okay, do you want to start your exercise regimen? Literally walk around the block 3 times a week. Commit to 3 times a week, then increase to 5. Okay? And eventually, like for me, after I got to a certain point with the running, I finally committed to a gym, because I had proven to myself that I was ready to make that commitment, versus the other way around, thinking, well, if I buy the gym membership, then I'm going to commit. It kind of doesn't work like that. If I buy the patches, then I'll commit. No, like the nicotine patches. Like, no, it doesn't really work like that. And, and it's the same, like, okay, I want to start this business. Well, what is the smallest common thing, like you're having resistance to change. You don't want to get started. And I'm not saying go out and quit your job, but there's always some small thing that you can do to get started. So is that reading 5 pages of a book that's related to whatever it is you want to start doing? That takes, not even 15 minutes in the morning. So, and you can squeeze it in. Do you want to wake up earlier? This is one that I constantly struggle with. And you know what it's going to take? It's going to take not, hey, all right, tomorrow I promise I'm going to get up at 5:30. No, it's where do I wake up? When do I normally wake up? Okay, I get up at 7:30. All right, tomorrow I'm going to get up at 7:20. And it sounds stupid and it sounds insignificant, but over time, after 3 weeks, okay, now I'm going to get up at 7:10. And then 6:50 for 6:45. And before you know it, you're waking up an entire hour earlier. Even my meditation practice started out with just 5 minutes a day. That's all it was. And it was funny because it was the one thing I was so resistant to doing. I'm like, I don't want to sit in quiet for 5 minutes. And now I do it for, 10, 15, sometimes 20 or 30 minutes. And I do it most days. Am I perfect? No. Again, the process of change is always going to be an ongoing work in progress. But I would rather do 5 minutes a day and then feel amazing after 90 days, an entire year of putting those deposits in my positive mental bank of awesomeness than putting in one quick deposit for 3 weeks and then not feeling any benefits by the time, a year from now, 2 years from now. So I hope that this episode gave you some tools, some tips, and some kind of hacks. Although they're not really hacks. It's just like, I hate the word hack. All right. Let me just put it that way. I don't like the word hack. Some tools. I gave you some tools in your tool belt and a different way to kind of look at the process of making change in your life so that you can take that resistance that we talked about in the last episode and start with the smallest common denominator of actually implementing that change. Okay? Any questions, comments, whatever, share them in the comments below. I love to hear from you guys. Also, if you think there's something somebody else could get out of this, I would love it if you shared it with other like-minded people who are on this journey of self-transformation and personal development. Because, it only takes a second for us to light somebody else's candle and make the world a better place. All right, guys, till next time, that's going to do it for today. I love you all. Let's dance.